Donald Trump wants ISIS and its allies to police Gaza on his behalf. Now, some of you might think, come on, Owen, you're being ridiculous. This must be hyperbole. It must be exaggeration. However bad you think Donald Trump is, surely he wouldn't be wanting to use ISIS in Gaza. But it isn't an exaggeration. This is an exclusive in the Daily Telegraph of all newspapers. It's a staunchly right-wing pro-Israel newspaper. As their opening sentence says, the White House wants to recruit organised crime and drug-dealing gangs to form the new Gaza police force, the Telegraph can reveal. Donald Trump's administration has presented plans for a new security force heavily staffed by members of existing anti-Hamas armed militias, according to multiple Western officials. Now, we've covered this before. The Israeli state has armed and backed criminal gangs which have systematically looted aid in Gaza. As the Telegraph notes, these armed gangs have also committed murders and kidnappings. And as the Telegraph also notes, at least two of the major clan groups include members who have either actively fought alongside Islamic State or declared allegiance to the terrorist organisation. And why are they recruiting these gangs? Because according to one US military source, Donald Trump's so-called peace process, which is nothing of the sort, will not work without reliable security partners. So what's their idea of a reliable security partner? ISIS and drug dealers and criminals. Astonishing. Well, it isn't astonishing, is it? We'll talk about this and why this... Well, the wider significance. Involved in all of this is Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, who once declared that Gaza's waterfront property could be very valuable. He's pushing for a new temporary so-called safe community in an area of Gaza under IDF control, based on Hamas not disarming. And the so-called safe community is being built in a part of the southern city of Rafah, ruled by a militia implicated in looting, aid and smuggling drugs. Figures in this militia have fought with ISIS against Egypt, along with members of another group, the Dogmush clan, who are also, of course, being used by Donald Trump as the proposed new police force in Gaza. Now, Israel has long been backing ISIS-linked militia in Gaza. They were particularly keen on a militia led by Yasser Abu Shebab, who was recently killed in internal squabbles. According to the Israeli newspaper Israel Hayom last year, he was a prisoner of Hamas but escaped thanks to an Israeli airstrike and offered his services as a collaborator with the Israeli occupation. Now, as the people of Gaza were starving last year, Israel and its cheerleaders claimed that aid was being looted by Hamas. But it was in fact being systematically looted by these Israeli-backed militia. They were openly operating in an area controlled by the Israeli army, essentially under its protection. Now, at the time, Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid, who, by the way, backed the genocide, said after Netanyahu finished giving millions of dollars to Hamas, he moved on to giving weapons to organisations close to ISIS, all off the cuff, all without strategic planning, or leading to more disasters. To be clear, his objection to Israel backing ISIS-linked militia is not based on any concerns about the welfare of Palestinians, just the welfare of Israelis. Now, it's striking, isn't it, how Israel pushed the Hamas's ISIS narrative when both it and the US are now backing ISIS in Gaza. And by the way, the US allying itself to this form of extremism is not new. They armed and backed the Afghan jihadists fighting the Soviet Union in the 1980s. They compared them to the French resistance and the founding fathers of the United States at the time, which, as we all know, that all ended very well. It just goes to underline the opportunism and cynicism of Western power. We've seen how the war on terror, so-called, was used to racialise Muslims and turn them into the enemy within, while the West will happily back actual extremists to serve its perceived strategic interests. Now, in the case of Gaza, it's very clear that the repeatedly, openly stated plan of Donald Trump and the Israeli state to remove the entire surviving population of Gaza remains their intention. As Al Jazeera note, as Ramadan begins, Israel is still preventing enough aid and basic supplies from getting into Gaza. The so-called ceasefire deal mandated at least 600 aid trucks entering Gaza each day, but the real number is much lower, while Israel has violently killed hundreds of Palestinians since the so-called ceasefire began. And it's not just the Palestinians of Gaza who are suffering. You may well have missed this in the news because it has received no prominent coverage, but Israel has begun formally annexing the West Bank. It means they can designate large areas, their new law, of the illegally occupied West Bank as state property if Palestinians cannot prove ownership of their own land. Bezalel Smotrich, the genocidal Israeli finance minister, he's repeatedly said openly genocidal things, and de facto governor of the West Bank, said it was a continuation of the settlement revolution to control all our lands. The Palestinian presidency described it as de facto annexation. He also declared his intention was to work to encourage migration of Palestinians from the West Bank. In other words, he wants ethnic cleansing. The Israeli army and Israeli settlers are terrorising the population of the West Bank through murder, including many children, de facto kidnapping, incarceration in hideous conditions without charge or trial, or after being convicted by a kangaroo court, demolitions, forced removals, humiliating and time-consuming checkpoints. We could go on. He's also announced his intention to abolish the Oslo Accords and dismantle the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. He said, destroy the idea of an Arab terror state, finally formally and practically cancel the cursed Oslo Accords and get on the path of sovereignty while encouraging migration from both Gaza and from Judea and Samaria. There is no other long-term solution. Judea and Samaria is the biblical term used by Israeli extremists to justify, well, it's the term's like for the West Bank, to justify annexing the West Bank. Now, the obvious intention of the Israeli state is to remove all Palestinians from their own land, from the river to the sea. They don't want Palestinians there. It's a genocidal project. But their state depends generally on violent military expansionism beyond its own supposed, well, those borders. I mean, the West Bank and Gaza were not their borders. They're illegally occupied. But they go beyond that. Their former Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, has declared that Turkey poses a new strategic threat to Israel. This is just the latest example of Israel preparing for war with Turkey. Now, the genocide of the Palestinian people is facilitated by the West, and it is ongoing, which is why we have a responsibility in the West to speak out, which is why what has happened at the Berlinale is so important. This is the German film festival funded by the German government, but in part, which has helped facilitate Israel's genocide. The independent journalist Tyler Young asked a panel at the festival, including jury president Wim Wenders, about this.
Hi, I also have a political question. I was hoping to get a quick answer from everyone because since Eva said, change the world, this festival does not happen in a vacuum. The Berlinale as an institution has famously shown solidarity with the people in Iran and Ukraine, but never with Palestine, even today. So my question is, in light of the German government support of the genocide in Gaza and its role as the main funder of the Berlinale, do you, as a member of the jury, support this selective treatment of human rights?
I think, does the jury want to answer? I mean, I think we also want to talk about films in the festival, but...
Well, films are political, as you just said.
Exactly.
So.
No, this is, the films are not political in the meaning of the word, I think you think of the meaning of the world. The films are, as Wim said, it's about empathy. It's about trying to understand. It's about having, making your own mind. And I think this is really like asking us this question is a little bit unfair because, we are trying to not, we use the word change the world, but of course we are trying to talk to people, every single of the viewer, and to make them think. But we cannot be responsible for what their decision would be the decision to, to support Israel, or would be the decision to, support Palestine, or, we can talk about Senegal and all the other wars, you just pointed the biggest, but there are many other wars where genocide is committed, and we do not talk about that. So this is very complicated questions, and I think, as I said, it's a bit unfair asking us what do we think, how we support, not support, talking to our governments or not. Because that's the politicians, I'm speaking for myself. I go to elections, I vote using my, right as a citizen of Poland, as a citizen of Europe, of the world. And I go to marches, I support causes which I think I should support. But all of us here may have other things and take other decisions. So I think asking us these questions and expecting the general kind of answer is not fair. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
We cannot really enter the field of politics.
Yeah.
We have to stay out of politics, because if we made movies that are dedicatedly political, we enter the field of politics, but we are the counterweight to politics. We are the opposite of politics. We have to do the work of people and not the work of politicians.
Yeah, I think Wim just, summarized what I was trying nervously to say. Thank you, Wim. Yeah.
And vice versa.
What are these people talking about? These people are supposed to be clever, but they sound almost stupid as a cliche. I mean, it's willful stupidity. They were specifically asked about the Berlinale being used as a platform to show solidarity with Iran and Ukraine's people, which it has done, with no issues, but not the Palestinian people, which is particularly notable given the complicity of the German government in Israel's genocide. And they responded by how they had to stay out of politics and not be politicians. Not taking a stand, by the way, is itself a profoundly political stance, but what does it even mean? Would they argue that taking a stand in favour of the people of Iran and Ukraine is politics that they have to keep away from? No, they wouldn't. I'd wager they'd find it offensive if someone tried to shut down a conversation about showing solidarity with the people of Iran and Ukraine on the grounds that it is political. You see, it is important to show solidarity with the people of Ukraine and Iran. It is also worth stating that that takes no courage and has no consequences for you, because our government's not complicit in their crimes. The crimes being committed, against the people of Ukraine and against the people of Iran. It's not our weapons. It's not our aid. It's not our diplomatic and political support. The media is not cheerleading those crimes. And those speaking out about those crimes are not being smeared and deplatformed and beaten up by cops and sacked, arrested, imprisoned and deported. That's why it's so heartening to see so many big names who've taken part in the Berlinale condemning this silence and condemning the censoring of artists who've spoken out. That includes actors such as Javier Bardem, Tilda Swinton and Adam McKay. They say they expect the institutions in our industry to refuse complicity in the terrible violence that continues to be waged against Palestinians. They say, we are dismayed at the Berlinale's involvement in censoring artists who oppose Israel's ongoing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza and the German state's key role in enabling it. As the Palestine Film Institute has stated, the festival has been policing filmmakers alongside a continued commitment to collaborate with federal police on their investigations. They know filmmakers speaking out for the Palestinians were aggressively reprimanded by senior festival programmers and say, we fervently disagree with a statement made by the Berlinale 2026 jury president Wim Wenders that filmmaking is the opposite of politics. You cannot separate one from the other. They say at the end of the letter, just as the festival has made clear statements in the past about atrocities carried out against people in Iran and Ukraine, we call on the Berlinale to fulfill its moral duty and clearly state its opposition to Israel's genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes against Palestinians. And it completely ends its involvement in shielding Israel from criticism and calls for accountability. Bravo. Silence is complicity. This remains one of the great crimes of our age, an ongoing crime. And in countries whose governments, not least Germany, a country which seems addicted to genocide, in those countries, citizens have a responsibility to use their platforms, to use their influence and power to speak out against genocide. Very straightforward, no ifs, no buts. Please like and subscribe, leave your thoughts in your comments. Help us take on the pro-genocide media as ever at patreon.com/ownjoe84. We will be expanding the channel, as I keep saying, after I finish my book, The Fall of the West, which is imminent now, so that's great. Coming out later this year. Share the video, speak to you in a bit. Thanks as ever.